Hello viewers and welcome back to another episode of The Model Guy. In this episode we're going to be tackling the Eduard Mark IX Spitfire. This kit jumped the queue because Eduard released their Mark I Spitfire and I wanted to see how their Mark IX went together, as I heard a lot of good things about it and some not so great things about the new Spitfire. Since there's quite a few YouTube videos of this kit being built, I decided that I was going to focus more on overcoming issues you run into when you're modeling. And this beautiful kit goes together with really no issues. I ended up shooting myself in the foot because I was using a new chipping fluid for the first time, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. The first thing I want to do is get my American viewers wound up by making the following statement. You might be wondering why I'm doing a Spitfire in American markings. That may not be something you're familiar with. And the short story is, in 1942, the American Air Force didn't exactly have a top-of-the-line fighter that could match the German 109, FW-190, or the Japanese Zero. Now, before you send hate mail, realize that the Americans at the time were only using the P-39 Airacobra and the P-40 Warhawk. And as fantastic as it was, the P-38 Lightning was only beginning to deploy to the Aleutian Islands. So for the operations in Europe, there wasn't exactly a top-of-the-line fighter to go up against the shocking FW-190 that even the Spitfire at the time could not match. With the Royal Air Force experiencing testing with both the P-39 and P-40, they managed to convince the first two units from the American Air Force in England to jump into the brand new Mark IX Spitfire. The Mark IX Spitfire was being developed as a stopgap until a newer Spitfire could be produced to go against the FW-190 and give the RAF a fighting chance. Basically, a Mark IX Spitfire was the same airframe as a Mark V, but they had put an upgraded Merlin engine into it, giving it 40 more miles an hour to its top speed. The Mark IX Spitfires flown by Americans had their baptism of fire during the Dieppe raid, where unfortunately they lost 8 Spitfires with 7 damaged and only claimed 2 FW-190s destroyed. Before the two squadrons could get any more experience flying the Spitfires in combat, they were transferred to the Mediterranean to prepare for Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa. It was during the fighting in North Africa that the Americans flying the P-40 were in for a surprise. The P-40 had a reputation of being able to outdive anything the Germans or Japanese could put in the air, and one pilot found himself being chased by an Me-109 and immediately aimed the P-40 for the floor. Thinking he would pull away from the German, he was surprised when the 109 pulled up alongside him and the German pilot waved before pulling away. While American pilots flying the Spitfire were just reaching the peak of their efficiency in North Africa, a new American-made fighter began operation over Europe, and that was the P-47 Thunderbolt, a squadron made up of pilots who had experienced flying in the Battle of Britain with the Eagle Squadron, flying the Spitfire. The 31st Fighter Group would continue flying the Spitfire until the P-51B Mustang arrived in March 1944. So let's now talk about the Eduard Spitfire and what they've done with this kit. The way you build the cockpit, it's going to come together from several smaller pieces that, once they start going together, give you a very highly detailed cockpit that almost needs no extra work done to it. I simply added a few extra wires to make up for control cables or for hydraulics in the cockpit, and that was really it. I added a pin wash, and with the Spitfire cockpit being so tiny, there's not much you can see once it's all together, so that was pretty much it for adding detail. This kit also went together quite quickly. After only a few nights, I had the wings on the fuselage, and I was ready to do a little bit of sanding and priming. The only real problematic area with this kit was the cowling. Eduard molds it as two separate halves that you glue together, and although that does give you a very accurate curve and look, the only problem is it gives you quite a seam line that you have to correct. And that seam line runs through a lot of detail that you have to rescribe, like the panel lines and the rivets. So that does stop you in your tracks a little bit, but after a few hours work, you're on to paint. I know there's also been some complaints about the exhaust and the way they go together. However, with a lot of test fitting and patience, you actually get a very nice looking exhaust on the kit once it's all together. I wouldn't even really recommend going with resin to replace it. For paint, I elected to do the USAAF Spitfire Mark IX in North Africa, and being North Africa and a lot of reference photos showing quite a lot of wear and tear on the aircraft, I decided that this model was also going to show a lot of damage to it. So before any color went down, it was a matter of Mr. Color Silver 8 and then 2 coats of chipping fluid. The only problem is, if you didn't notice it there, I put on too much chipping fluid. It wasn't until a later trial with another part of the kit that I figured out that if you put too much chipping fluid on, the paint's going to come off like latex, and that makes for a very bad time. Another thing I did different on this kit was, rather than do the base color black and then white marbling on it, I decided to try using the color as a base just to see if it made a difference or if it saved me some time. I know that the black basing method always gives you quite a bit of tone and a lot more dynamic look to the paint, but I planned on doing post shading for the first time with this kit, so I didn't want to have too much going on at once. Having used that splatter template to put down a lighter color, I then came in with a very highly thinned down main color again, just to slowly cover it up until I was happy with the look. Once the Middlestone color was done, I then created a template with the Cricut machine, cut some paper masks, and used two-sided tape underneath them just to give me a more accurate livery on the Spitfire. And once that was done, it was time to repeat the marbling process with the dark earth. One of the reasons I found this livery very attractive is that it's not only just a USAAF markings, you also have the painted over RAF markings underneath, and that just adds a lot more interest to the kit without being too flashy. So that was something I wanted to go with as soon as I seen the box and the art on it. It was also cool as well because when I took this to the Alberta Military Modelers Show last week, a few people talked to me and said they didn't know that the Americans had flown Spitfires, let alone flown them in North Africa. It was very humbling to hear that, because one of the reasons that I do this YouTube channel and build models is just to promote people learning about history, and maybe they'll learn something they didn't know before, or it'll inspire them to go look further into something. Now that the base paint is on the aircraft, it's time to cover up the RAF markings. So by mixing the British dark earth and dark green, it gave me a weird dark brown color that kind of made sense, because you can't find a color that was actually used. You can't Google what color did the Americans paint over RAF roundels with, because I didn't find any information for that. And then I kind of had to use my best judgment. And the best judgment I had was using colors you have laying around to your advantage. And I would think that with everything being painted over to the desert colors, that there'd be quite a bit of green paint laying around not being used. So I kind of went with that idea, and it matched the box art pretty well. It wasn't too dark, it wasn't too brown, and it kind of worked. I simply used a compass cutter to cover up where the RAF roundels would be, and then using the decals, I put some tape over them and freehanded over the American squadron codes to give me an idea of how much I needed to black out. At this point, everything was going together pretty well. I liked the colors, everything seemed to be working, and I was getting ready to do some weathering when I started to notice that this off-brand washi tape may have been a little bit of a bad idea, because it was starting to lift off the paint in certain areas. This should have been a huge clue to use the kit decals and don't try anything crazy. But I seen some awesome weathering references like here on the leading edge by the fuselage, and decided I really wanted to weather this aircraft some more. And insert gun pointing at foot. It's kind of funny looking back now how much effort I had to put into getting this paint to chip. You put the water on, you allow it to soak through to activate the chipping fluid, and then using a toothpick, and my favorite thing, a sewing needle stolen from my wife, you can make those tiny micro scratches, and it just took a bit of effort to get the paint flaking, until I decided I did not like the decal colors and wanted to paint them instead. We'll get to that in a moment though, as I just want to point out, when you're doing weathering on an aircraft, it's a good idea to have solid reference photos, because it's very easy to go too far or go to a level where it seems unbelievable. And Spitfire has actually had quite a bit of wear and tear on the wings from crew rearming them, maintenance and things like that, and there's a lot of great photos out there. But if you willy-nilly it, you're going to kind of go too far and probably ruin your model and not like it. And here we go, the moment you're probably waiting for. I found that the decals on this kit for the US markings were too bright compared to the paint, and I kind of wanted to flatten them and darken them a little bit. So I decided to create a mask, cut it with the compass cutter, and trace the decals, come in with some TAMIYA colors, and paint them on, because it always looks a lot better and it's easier to get it into rivets, panel lines, etc. And my opinion is they look better than a decal anyway. It also makes it easier to weather them because now you're not worried about trying to tie down carrier film with a gloss coat and all that goodness. Now in this shot, you can see a joint section of paint that lifted off. Again, I found out after watching a few other videos that you should only mist on the AK chipping fluid in 2 light coats, and if you see it beating up at all, you've gone too far. So I basically had to hashtag fix that shit and come back in and completely redo the roundels, which in reality, it only set me back a few hours, but it's a step I wish I didn't have to do, and it's definitely a learning experience to put in the toolbox and remember for future use. The second time around, I chose to use a silhouette machine to cut the markings, and they ended up being a lot crisper. And basically, the silver lining is there. I ended up with better looking markings. Once again, because it's painted on, you can unify everything with only 2 coats of clear. You don't have to worry about sanding down carrier film. After coming back to the bench the next day, I decided that the markings were still too bright and the paint still looked too new. So I planned on putting in a thin filter of buff just to make it look more faded and worn out. And this process took a few hours because it takes so long to build up that cloudiness. But the advantage is because it takes so long, you have a lot of control over how much depth this effect has. You can also do this same effect using oils, but truth be told, I'm still getting used to them and I didn't want to wreck the kit. I know with a gloss coat you can wipe everything away, but there's still that fear there that I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm probably going to screw it up. At the end of the day though, you do have to cowboy up and try it, because by making those mistakes, you'll learn what's going to work, what doesn't work, and it'll help you improve as a modeler. After doing my panel lines, I decided the aircraft still looked too new and came in with another light buff filter just to push that brightness back further. While I'm throwing this flat coat onto the spit, why don't you write in the comment section below what is a technique for model making that you either haven't tried because you're kind of hesitant to because you might screw it up, or B, on the flip side, what's something that you were nervous of trying but once you did it you're like, hey, this isn't so bad. Write it in the comment section below and let's feed the community. Having screwed up the paint earlier, you'll notice this time around I'm lightly misting on that chipping fluid, and again it's 2 very thin layers. Once they've had an hour to dry, then I come in with the coats of color. I know Mr. Color makes an aluminum color, that's a lot of colors, but I do like their silver color 8 because it is very durable and it actually holds up quite well to scratching and sanding and makes a great base for aluminum. Here I'm using the black basing effect, and I'm not using a stencil, just some white squigglies, just to show you get the same effect without having to buy stencils. I've had a lot of people ask about them, but you don't really need them. They're just kind of a luxury item at this point. The real advantage to the splatter mask is it just lets you cover a larger area in a shorter amount of time. While I was at this section of the kit, Woody was chipping his KI-100 and was telling me about the sanding sponge method he was trying that he learned from Will Patterson's video. So I decided to try that as well, and I actually think that turned out quite well, especially on the propellers. So that's something I'm going to have to add into the toolbox for future use as well. Now with the nose cone getting ready to go on the aircraft with the propeller and landing gear, I still wasn't happy with the weathering. The aircraft still didn't have a dusty look to it, and I really wanted that to be something that was emphasized with this kit. So once it was standing on its legs and everything was together, I decided to try using some pigments, just some dry North African pigments from MIG, and I put some in the landing gear bays and then put some on top of the wings and below and kind of rub them in with a Q-tip just to get a sandy look. And finally, I had the weathering to a point where I was happy with it. This spit finally looked like it had been left out to bake in the North African sun, to fade the paint, gather dust, all that fun stuff, and it was finally telling a story, and that's at the end what I really wanted it to do. Like a lot of model builders, I am my own worst critic, and the one thing that still stands out about this kit is that I still feel that I've gone too far with the chipping on that left wing. It matches several reference photos. It doesn't seem to go too far, but in my mind's eye, every time I see that, it just feels like it's a bit too much. But at this point, having redone the markings, I decided to leave it and press on. And here I go with the oils. This took about 3 or 4 attempts, and then I finally came back to it because I still was not happy, and I finally got the oils to a spot where I actually liked them. So I'm gonna have to get a paint mule and really practice this some more, but when I was finally starting to get pissed off with it, it started to come together. The nice thing about oil paints is they're very forgiving and have a very long dry time, so you are always able to come in and change things if you're not happy with them. Oil streaks on the bottom of a Spitfire are a pretty regular occurrence, and it was after working with this, I was confident enough to come back and redo the fuel spills at that cap for, I don't know, what seems to be the 6th or 7th time now at this point. But again, there's always things to improve on and learn when you're model building, and if you're not learning new things or pushing yourself, I think you're really putting yourself as a disadvantage, because that's what I enjoy a lot about building, when I'm able to learn a new technique and improve on it. Exhaust pipes are another area where I have problems. I don't want the thing to look like it's gone to the junkyard, but I do want them to have some wear and tear. So the light sky gray and the brownish black seem to really work in this case. So that's probably going to be my go-to method moving forward. So for the exhaust stains and the gun smoke, it's the usual approach of some highly thinned down black brown and just slowly building that up until I'm happy with the effect. And speaking about happy with effects, I'm doing the oil spill again at the cap, and I'm finally happy with it. So that's going to be it for this build. I am the Model Guy. Please, if you haven't, hit like and subscribe. Let me know what you like about the video. Let me know what you don't like if you don't like something about it, and that helps me bring you better content. I am the Model Guy, and I will see you next time.